Let me start with something that I hear in almost every conversation with a man who is in early recovery. He's found out that his partner is still struggling. She is still anxious. She's still asking the same questions over and over. She still has insomnia. She's still in a lot of pain. And he's doing everything that he knows to do. In fact, he is saying the right things, and he's being available to her. He's telling her that he loves her. He's making promises that this will never happen again. And then he says something like, I have reassured her 100 times. I don't know what else she needs from me. And I have to remind him, the problem is not how many times you've said it. The problem is what you're using to say it. Today's episode is about something that seems counterintuitive at the beginning. But once you understand it, it changes everything about how you show up for her. What we call impact work. Why reassurance does not reduce betrayal anxiety. What it actually triggers instead. And what the nervous system is genuinely looking for. This episode is for both sides of betrayal. If you're a betrayed partner, I want you to understand why your anxiety is not irrational, not at all, and why it does not mean that recovery is impossible. And if you're the man in recovery, I want you to understand what you're actually being asked to do, because most men have no idea. They think that they need to get better with words, and that is maybe, at best, 20% of the work that is needed right now. So let's get into it.
Welcome to Joy Recovery Radio. In this space, we talk about betrayal, recovery, and relational harm through the lens of integrity, accountability, and trauma-informed care. Our goal is not to rush healing or prescribe outcomes, but to offer language, clarity, and grounded perspective. This podcast is educational, not therapeutic. You're invited to listen slowly, take what resonates, and leave the rest. Let's begin.
Before betrayal was discovered or disclosed, however it went for you, trust operated a certain way in your relationship. There was a basic assumption that words meant something, that if he said it, it reflected reality. So the equation looked something like this. Words equal assumed reality. So a partner asks, where were you? And she gets an answer. And even if something felt off, even if her gut registered something, her brain overrode that signal because she has been trained to trust the voice that she was hearing. That's normal. That's what attachment does. That's what a close relationship should do. You learn to calibrate your sense of reality to the person that you're attached to. But then, discovery or disclosure happens. Or, in some cases, it drips out over months. Or he's finally confronted and can no longer maintain the compartmentalization. However it happens in that moment or across several moments, something in her doesn't just learn new information. Something inside of her breaks. What breaks is the old equation. Words no longer equal assumed reality because the words were wrong. Months, years, perhaps decades. And those words that we used, they were calm, they were convincing, they were loving, they were reassuring, but they were sitting on top of a secret sexual basement that she had no access to. In the Minwalla model, it is called DCSR. That stands for the deceptive, compartmentalized sexual relational reality. It's a parallel reality. It's a second life. And it's maintained covertly, while the overt relationship continued on the surface as if everything was normal. So here's the critical point I'm trying to make. You maintained that secret basement using your voice, using your words. You reassured her. You deflected her concerns. You explained away the signals that she was having. You gaslit her. You used the same voice that is now trying to heal her. That same instrument, your voice, your words, is what caused the original harm. Her nervous system is not stupid. It learns. And what it learned across perhaps years of being managed and redirected and calmed by a voice that was lying, what she learned is this particular voice is not a reliable signal of truth. So now when that voice says, I promise it's different now, her nervous system doesn't say, okay, I believe you. Her nervous system says, that's exactly what you said last time. So gentlemen, it can feel like a character attack. It can feel like your partner is refusing to heal, like nothing you ever do will be enough. But actually, it's basic biology. It is the entirely predictable outcome of your sustained deception. I want you to hear these words very carefully. You trained her not to trust your voice. You trained her nervous system not to trust your words. I know you didn't mean to do it. It wasn't intentional, but that is what happened. And understanding that is critical for your recovery. This is reality. If you don't understand that, you'll keep doing what does not work. You'll keep trying to reassure your way out of a problem that words or your voice simply cannot solve. If you're a betrayed partner listening right now, your anxiety in the face of his reassurance, I want you to know, that's your nervous system doing what nervous systems are supposed to do. Everything's working just fine. You sustained a serious injury, and so your nervous system is scanning for reliable signals. And your system has learned correctly that his words, his voice alone is not a reliable signal. Your body's working just fine. Your body is protecting you. The problem is the absence of real evidence for your nervous system to assess. I want to go a little bit further now because there's something important that most people don't realize. Reassurance doesn't just fail to reduce betrayal anxiety. In fact, in some cases, particularly when it's repeated without any behavioral change, reassurance actually makes her anxiety worse. Here's why. When he offers reassurance, her mind does not process it as new information. Her mind processes it as a familiar pattern. And the familiar pattern carries with it all the weight of what it was attached to before. When he says, I love you, she's heard that. He said it while the secret sexual basement was running full capacity. I will never hurt you again. She's heard that. He said something similar after the first time she caught him, but it continued. I've changed. You can trust me now. Well, that phrase specifically was used during years of active deception. So when you say these things now, even sincerely, with total authenticity, I want to be really clear. Your sincerity is not the point. Her nervous system does not receive it as comfort. Her nervous system flags it as a recognizable pattern of harm. So your reassurance, when it is verbal and it's not accompanied by behavioral change, it does not signal safety to her. In fact, it signals that the pattern that was present during the harm is still here. Men, this is one of the hardest things to sit with because you're trying and you mean it. You're sincere. And the harder you try with words, the worse it sometimes gets. And it just feels impossible. But the answer is not to reassure less or to stop expressing yourself. The answer is to understand what your words are competing against and to stop expecting your words to win that competition. You cannot verbally override her learned threat response, but you can replace it over time with a different pattern, a new pattern that her nervous system can finally, over time, say, this is new data. This is different from before. If you're a betrayed partner who has noticed that his reassurance sometimes spirals you rather than calming you, well, now you have a framework for why. Your nervous system is doing its job. What is it doing? It's cross-referencing his current words against his historical pattern. And until his pattern changes consistently over time, until there's a new data set, there's nothing for your nervous system to update on. So what does work? If my words are contaminated, if my reassurance backfires, well, what does her nervous system actually need? Her nervous system is not looking for comfort. It's looking for evidence. Specifically, it's looking for data that her reality is stable and accessible again, that you're not going to surprise her, that the information she receives matches what's actually happening, that she can observe her environment and she can trust what she sees. Well, what does that look like in practice? Let me try to be as concrete as I can. Number one, consistent behavior over time. I'm not talking about a good week, not even a good month, but sustained, observable consistency for months, even years, that allows her nervous system to begin building a new reference pattern. Number two, what does this look like in practice? Proactive transparency. You volunteer information instead of waiting to be asked or it has to be extracted from you. You share relevant things without being prompted by her. This is the opposite of your covert pattern from the past. The covert pattern was you would withhold information until forced to release it. Proactive transparency breaks that pattern at the behavioral level. Number three, non-defensive responses to her questions. She asks something, you do not shut down. You don't sigh. Here we go again. You do not perform patience while communicating that her question is a burden for you, but you answer calmly, completely, honestly, without making her feel like she's the problem or she's a burden. And fourthly, stable emotional regulation. You do not dysregulate when the topic of your behavior comes up. You stay grounded. You stay present. You tolerate her pain without making your discomfort her problem to manage. Men, the implication of what I just described is so significant. Recovery is not primarily a verbal process. Rebuilding her safety is not about your voice or your words, not near as much as it is about your behavior. You cannot talk your way into her nervous system and convince it that it's safe. You have to build your way there. This is what we mean in the 3 I's framework with the men that we work with. When we talk about integrity as the first step, not your insight or your empathy or your understanding, but your integrity. Integrity is the full elimination of deception. It's restoring an accurate reality with your partner. That comes before anything else. Because nothing that follows integrity, not impact work or integration or any future possibility of intimacy, is possible without integrity. Integrity is an observable behavioral state. Either reality is accurate or it isn't. Either you're being transparent or you're not. There's no such thing as partial integrity. Integrity doesn't have an asterisk. For partners, the framework that I just described, the 3 I's, behavioral consistency over time, proactive transparency, stable non-defensiveness to your questions. That is the standard for what real change looks like from the outside as an observer. You are not required to feel trust before you have evidence. Trust is not a decision. Trust is a conclusion. It's a conclusion that your nervous system will begin to reach on its own timeline when the evidence of his behavior supports it. I want to add one more layer to this before we close this episode, because there's a version of what I've described that looks right on the surface, but it's still fundamentally broken. It's called pseudo-recovery or fake recovery. Pseudo-recovery is when a man performs the behaviors of recovery without the internal shift, the transformation that makes them real. He goes to therapy because it keeps the peace. He's transparent because he's afraid of consequences. He tolerates your questions, but not out of a sense of accountability or responsibility, but as a way to manage your responses and to demonstrate his compliance. The problem with pseudo-recovery is that it will eventually reveal itself. It always does. It leaks. The tolerance runs out at some point. His resentment surfaces. The performance is not sustainable. And when it does leak, it signals to her nervous system that the pattern underneath it all was never changed. Recovery that is fundamentally motivated by outcome management, by either keeping the relationship or avoiding consequences, or reducing her anxiety for your own comfort, that's not real recovery. It's a more sophisticated version of the same self-protective system that built the basement in the first place. Real integrity work, the kind that actually moves a partner's nervous system over time, is accountability without any agenda. It's a character shift. It takes time. It takes real work. It's not something you perform your way to. And it's the only version that actually changes the data your partner's nervous system is reading. So let me close with this. After betrayal, reassurance feels like the most natural response in the world. Of course you want to comfort her. Of course she wants to feel safe. That impulse is completely normal and human. But her nervous system doesn't respond to impulses. It responds to patterns. And after sustained deception, the only pattern that actually changes things is behavioral consistency. It's observable. It's sustained. It's durable. It's non-defensive. It's predictable. Reassurance tries to create trust through promises, your voice, your words. But recovery rebuilds trust through predictable behavior. To the men, stop trying to reassure your way through this and start building. Slowly, consistently, without expectation of an immediate return. That is what integrity looks like when it's not for an audience. To the partners, your nervous system is the gauge. When the behavioral evidence accumulates, it will begin to move. Well, thanks for joining us today for Joy Recovery Radio. You can find all of our educational programs at joy-recovery.com, including our academy. If this episode helped you think more clearly about where you are, consider sharing it. Someone in your life may need to hear exactly this message. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Joy Recovery Radio. Healing after betrayal is not about speed, certainty, or outcomes. It begins with clarity, safety, and integrity. If today's episode was helpful, you can find additional educational resources and information about the Joy Recovery Academy and our private coaching at joy-recovery.com. Remember, joy is possible when you live in integrity.